The wind howled through the empty streets of Kareth Prime. A world once bright with color, now covered in dust and hunger. A small alien girl walked alone under the pale sun, her tiny feet leaving faint marks in the ash-colored sand. Her name was Lyra, barely 10 cycles old, carrying a small metal case pressed to her chest. Inside it lay the last medicine vial she could not use because her mother was too weak to take it. Her mother lay dying in an old cargo pod at the edge of the city, breathing slowly, whispering one word again and again: help. Lyra had knocked on 17 doors across 17 worlds. Every time she begged the same way. Please, my mother is sick, she needs help, food, anything. And every time the answer was silence, or worse, fear. The Torkin closed their gates, saying, "We cannot waste resources." The Falari priests bowed their heads, pretending not to see her. The Vorn soldiers even raised their rifles, shouting, "Go back to your kind." Lyra didn't cry anymore. Her tears had dried long ago, replaced by something heavier and hopelessness. The sky above her shimmered with transport ships leaving the planet, their engines burning bright blue. People looked away as she passed. No one wanted to see a starving child anymore. Her stomach ached, her hands trembled, but she kept walking, guided by one small map she had stolen from a trade post. It showed one last planet on the edge of the Orion Spur. A small world called Earth. Many said Earth was strange, filled with unpredictable beings called humans. They said humans were emotional, dangerous, even foolishly kind, but to Lyra, that foolishness sounded like hope. When she reached the docking bay, the guard laughed at her request. "You want to go to Earth? You must be desperate," he said. She looked up with her tired eyes and whispered, "Yes, I am." The guard didn't stop her, maybe because he thought she wouldn't survive the trip anyway. The small cargo shuttle shook as it left orbit, stars stretching into lines as the engines roared. Lyra clutched her case tighter, thinking of her mother's fading smile. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Please. Just one more door." Days passed inside the shuttle. The food rations ended, the air grew thin, and the stars outside turned brighter. She watched them through the cracked viewport, thinking how quiet the universe was. 17 worlds filled with life, yet not one heart willing to care. Her voice was weak when she finally whispered to the ship's old AI, "Set course for Earth." The AI hesitated, its systems damaged, but obeyed, plotting a slow path to the human world. She fell asleep in the dark cabin, dreaming of green fields she had never seen. When the ship finally descended through Earth's atmosphere, the storm clouds glowed with lightning. The shuttle landed roughly in a human city filled with neon lights and metal towers. Rain poured heavily, washing the dust from her face. She stepped out into the night, soaked and shivering, the case still clutched in her arms. She walked past glowing signs she couldn't read, past crowds of humans staring at her strange small figure. Some stepped back in fear, others whispered, pointing. But one human, an older woman in a gray coat, stopped and watched her quietly. Lyra walked to the nearest door, lifted her shaking hand and knocked. No answer. She tried another and another 17 times again through the endless rain. Each time her voice grew weaker. Each time her hope dimmed a little more. When she reached the 18th door, her knees gave out. She fell forward, the case rolling from her arms and hitting the metal steps with a soft clink. She whispered faintly, "Please, someone, help her." Before her vision blurred, the door opened with a slow creak, warm light spilling onto the wet ground. A human man stepped out, his expression soft with concern. He knelt beside her, gently touching her shoulder. "Hey there, are you hurt?" he asked, his voice calm and steady. Lyra looked up weakly, her alien eyes reflecting the light. She tried to speak, but only a whisper came out. "My mother, she's dying." The man didn't ask what species she was, didn't ask for permission. He simply lifted her in his arms and shouted into the house, "Mara, get the medkit!" Inside, warmth filled the air. Strange smells of food, light, and comfort surrounded her. She heard voices, hurried footsteps, and the sound of a blanket wrapping around her body. For the first time in her short life, she felt safe. Her eyes closed slowly as she heard a gentle human voice whisper, "You're safe now, little one." Outside, the storm raged on, but inside that small human home, kindness had opened its door, and for the first time in 17 worlds, someone had finally said yes. When Lyra opened her eyes again, the room around her was warm and filled with soft light. She lay on a couch wrapped in a blanket that smelled of soap and cinnamon. For a moment she thought she was dreaming, because warmth was something she had forgotten long ago. Her small hands moved, touching the soft fabric, and her eyes blinked against the golden sunlight coming through the window. A human woman sat beside her, stirring something in a steaming cup, her eyes gentle and kind. "Hey, sweetheart," the woman said softly. "You're safe here. Don't be afraid." Lyra tried to sit up, but her body trembled with weakness, and the woman helped her gently. The man from the night before entered the room, his shirt still damp from the storm. He smiled when he saw Lyra awake. "I'm Daniel," he said, "and this is my wife, Mara." He placed a bowl of warm soup in front of her. "Eat slowly, okay? You've been out for almost a day." Lyra hesitated. Staring at the food, it looked too real, too kind to be true, but when she took the first spoonful, the taste filled her chest with warmth that reached her eyes. She hadn't eaten real food in days, maybe weeks. Mara smiled softly, wiping a tear from Lyra's cheek. "Don't worry. You can have as much as you want after a while." Daniel asked gently, "What happened to you, little one?" Lyra looked down at the blanket, her hands trembling. "My mother is sick," she whispered. "We had no food, no medicine. I went to 17 worlds. No one helped us." Her voice broke as she added, "You're the 18th Door." Daniel and Mara exchanged a glance, their expressions filled with quiet disbelief. Mara reached for the small metal case that had fallen beside the couch. Opening it carefully, inside was a cracked medical vial, half filled with a pale blue liquid. "What is this?" Daniel asked softly. Lyra's voice trembled. "It's medicine for her, but I don't know how to use it." Daniel stood and picked up his communicator. "Mara, call Dr. Patel. Tell him it's urgent." Within an hour, a human doctor arrived, his medical drone hovering beside him. When he saw the alien child, he didn't hesitate, didn't ask for permission from the council. He only said, "Where's her mother?" Lyra pointed weakly toward the window. "She's still on the ship, outside the city." Daniel didn't wait. He grabbed his coat and headed out into the rain again. The storm had not yet stopped, but he didn't care. He found the small cargo pod half sunken in mud, lights flickering. Inside, a frail alien woman lay motionless. Her breathing faint, Daniel lifted her carefully, wrapping her in his jacket, and carried her back through the storm. When they returned, Dr. Patel immediately began working. He connected scanners, injected stabilizers, and studied the blue vial. "This formula is alien," he muttered, "but maybe we can adapt it." Hours passed in silence as the machines beeped softly. Lyra sat by her mother's side, holding her hand tightly. Mara placed a soft hand on Lyra's shoulder, whispering, "She's strong. And you're safe here." The girl nodded slowly, her eyes filled with quiet trust. Outside the window, the city lights shimmered in the rain. For the first time, she didn't feel invisible. She didn't feel alone, meanwhile. Word began to spread through the city. An alien child rescued by humans, brought from the stars seeking help. Some citizens came to offer blankets and food. Others brought medical supplies. Even the local news drones hovered outside, recording the scene. "Human family shelters alien child," the headlines said, in the crowded bars and public halls. People whispered, "Why did no one else help her?" 17 worlds turned her away, one man said, shaking his head. "But humans helped without asking who she was," another answered proudly. Back in the small apartment, the doctor smiled at last. "She's stable now," he said. "Her body is weak, but she'll live." Lyra's hands covered her mouth as tears streamed down her cheeks. She looked up at Daniel and Mara, whispering, "You saved her." Mara knelt beside her, her voice soft as the rain. "No, little one, you saved her. You never gave up." Daniel smiled gently. "You knocked until someone opened the door." Lyra looked at him, her alien eyes shimmering like starlight. She asked in a quiet voice, "Why did you help me?" The others said humans are dangerous. Daniel chuckled softly. "They're right, we can be," he said, "but we're also the kind that can't ignore a cry for help." As night fell again, the storm finally cleared, stars shone above the city, and the moonlight touched the window glass. Lyra sat beside her sleeping mother, watching the stars through the glass. She wondered how far those 17 worlds were now, and if they could see her, she whispered softly. The 18th door opened. Mara heard her and smiled quietly. "And it will never close again." Down below, in the heart of Earth's great city, a single act of kindness had lit a spark that would soon reach far beyond one small home. Because somewhere out there in the silent halls of the Galactic Council, Someone had already heard about what the humans had done, and they were afraid, not of humanity's weapons this time, but of their hearts. The news spread faster than any signal the Galactic Council could control. Across hundreds of systems, screens flickered with the same headline: Human family saves alien child rejected by 17 worlds. It was a small story, almost nothing in scale compared to the wars and trade disputes that filled the Council's agenda. But it burned through the galaxy like wildfire, because everyone saw themselves in that little alien girl, and everyone saw what humanity had done without asking for anything in return. On the shining world of Verilon, home of the Council chambers, diplomats gathered in silence. The great domed hall echoed with murmurs as ambassadors argued. "This is dangerous," hissed a Vorn representative, his armor gleaming under the blue light. "They're manipulating public emotion." A Falari priest raised his feathered hand. "No, my brother, they acted with compassion. Something our own temples have long forgotten." Across the table, the Torkin minister banged his claw on the surface. "We turned the child away because our systems are collapsing. We cannot feed our own." But their excuses sounded hollow. Even the Council drones recorded their unease, broadcasting it across every listening colony. In the back of the chamber, the human representative sat quietly, a woman named Admiral Liana Hayes. She was not smiling, not gloating, just listening, her uniform dark and simple. When the chairman finally turned to her and asked, "Does humanity have a statement?" She stood, her voice was calm, steady, and clear. "We didn't do this for applause," she said. "We did what any species should have done." Her words hung in the air like thunder after lightning. The girl was dying, and 17 worlds said no. "We said yes," she continued, "that's all." The chamber went silent, thousands of eyes watching, and then slowly, a single pair of hands began to clap. It came from a small colony envoy, and not human. Not powerful, but brave. Others followed, first a few, then more, until the sound of applause filled the entire chamber. The Torkin representative slammed his chair shut and stormed out. The Falari priest bowed his head, tears shining in his golden eyes. The Council's network was flooded within minutes. Millions of messages pouring in from ordinary citizens. Messages that said things like, "Why did we turn her away? And why can't we be more like them?" Back on Earth, Daniel and Mara didn't even know what had happened. They were busy helping Lyra's mother recover, unaware that their small act had started a movement. The human news networks refused to take credit. Instead, they focused on the message: kindness needs no permission. Children in human schools sent letters and drawings to Lyra. One note simply said, "You have a home now." And far away, in the shadowed halls of alien empires, rulers watched with quiet dread, because they knew something powerful had been reborn. The idea that humanity's heart could unite worlds faster than their fleets ever could. The Council called for an emergency meeting to contain the growing unrest. Some demanded sanctions against Earth, claiming humans were interfering with galactic order. Others said humanity's influence was dangerous because it inspired hope. The Council chairman asked again, "Does humanity wish to respond?" Admiral Hayes stood once more, her eyes steady as stars. "Your order was never peace," she said. "It was silence." She leaned forward, her voice turning cold. "If mercy is rebellion to you, then we will proudly rebel." The chamber erupted, chaos breaking through polished protocol. The human delegation walked out, their heads high, their silence louder than any speech. That same night, across thousands of worlds, small changes began to happen. A Falari nurse treated an off-worlder for free, saying, "Oh, if humans can help strangers, so can I." A Vorn soldier shared his rations with refugees, and in the back streets of the Torkin capital, a group of young citizens painted on the walls, "Be the 18th Door." It became a slogan, a whisper of defiance spreading through the galaxy. The Council tried to erase it from public feeds, but it was too late. The movement had begun, not with a war or conquest, but with a small child in a human home that refused to close its door. Back on Earth, Lyra's mother slowly regained her strength. One evening, as the sun set, she looked at Daniel and Mara, her voice weak but filled with emotion. "I don't understand why you helped us," she said. Daniel smiled softly. "Because you knocked," he answered. She nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "Then I hope the galaxy keeps knocking," Mara whispered. "We'll keep answering." And far beyond that small home in the Council's grand halls, Alien leaders struggled with a feeling they hadn't known in generations. Guilt, because the humans had not shamed them with power, but with compassion, and that more than any weapon terrified them. Weeks passed since the council's meeting, but the echoes of humanity's words refused to fade. Across distant stars, people whispered the same phrase again and again: be the 18th door. What began as one small story had become something the galaxy could not ignore. Kindness, once mocked as weakness, had begun to spread like light through cracks in cold walls. On the frozen colonies of the Vorn Empire, soldiers quietly shared food with orphans they once pushed away. In the golden towers of the Falari priests, the elders opened their temples to the poor for the first time in a century, and in the industrial cities of the Torkin, workers painted murals of a small alien girl holding a human hand. Everywhere the story of Lyra was retold, sometimes as myth, sometimes as truth, but always ending with the same words. When all others refused, humanity opened its door. Back on Earth, Lyra's mother had recovered enough to walk again. She spent her mornings sitting near the window, watching the city lights shimmer below. Sometimes she would look at Daniel and Mara and whisper, "Your people changed everything." Mara always smiled gently. No, we only reminded them what they had forgotten. Lyra attended a small human school now, learning the strange letters of the human language. She loved the sound of laughter echoing in the hallways. It was something no other world had given her, the feeling of belonging. But far beyond Earth, not everyone celebrated the change. In the high-orbit stations of the Torkin Dominion, generals met in secret. "They're spreading influence through pity," one growled. "If this continues, our citizens will stop fearing us," another slammed his fist. The humans are dangerous not because of weapons, but because of hope. They plotted to regain control, to silence the spreading compassion before it unbalanced their power. They didn't understand that ideas could not be bombed or banned, because the fire had already reached the hearts of their own people. On one small colony moon, a convoy of human ships arrived unannounced. They carried medical teams, food, and engineers. When the colony's governor tried to deny them entry, the crowd shouted him down. A Falari child from the slums ran forward. Waving a small banner made from scrap cloth, it read, "Humanity helped her. They'll help us too." The humans smiled and began unloading supplies. Working side by side with locals, they never asked for payment, never demanded loyalty. They only said, "We help because we can." Within months, the movement became unstoppable across hundreds of worlds. People began calling it the return of kindness. Even the council could not silence it anymore. Admiral Liana Hayes received thousands of messages each day, some of gratitude, some of apology, but one message stood out among them all. It came from a Falari high priest, written in gold letters. "For centuries we preached faith, but you reminded us of love." The Galactic Council held another emergency session this time. The tone was different, quieter, heavier. The same representatives who once sneered at Earth now spoke with uneasy respect. "The humans are building trust faster than we can issue laws," one said. "Maybe that's not a bad thing," another replied softly. For the first time, no one interrupted, no one shouted. They all knew the truth. The galaxy was changing, and it was too late to stop it. Back on Earth, Daniel and Mara stood at the spaceport, watching as a crowd gathered to see Lyra and her mother off. Human aid ships were heading toward the border systems to deliver supplies, and Lyra wanted to help. Her mother smiled proudly. "She was saved by kindness, now she wants to share it," she said. Daniel knelt down and placed a small pendant around Lyra's neck. It was shaped like a door, simple and silver, engraved with tiny words, "The 18th. When you see someone in need," Daniel said, "you open this. And you remember." Lyra hugged them tightly, tears glimmering in her alien eyes. "I will," she whispered. "I promise." As the ship lifted into the sky, Mara looked at Daniel, her voice quiet. "Do you think the galaxy will ever understand us?" Daniel smiled faintly, watching the engines glow. "They don't have to understand us," he said. "They just have to feel what we do." Above them, the stars stretched wide and bright, and somewhere among them, on worlds that once turned her away, doors began to open again, for kindness had returned, carried on the wings of humanity's heart, and soon the galaxy would discover that compassion, once awakened, never sleeps. The great chamber of the Galactic Council had never been so silent. Thousands of diplomats, priests, and commanders filled the shining hall, but not one dared to speak. At the center of the vast circle stood a small figure. Lyra, no longer the trembling child who once knocked on doors. She wore a simple white uniform with the emblem of Earth's humanitarian fleet. Her pendant, shaped like a tiny door, glimmered softly against her chest. Behind her stood Admiral Liana Hayes, representing Earth once again. The humans had not come with fleets or soldiers this time, only words. The council had requested their presence to discuss the spreading unrest of kindness, as they called it. But humanity had come to show something far greater, a lesson the galaxy had long forgotten. Lyra stepped forward first, her voice steady but gentle. "When I was small," she said, "I begged for help across 17 worlds, and no one answered." Her words echoed across the chamber. Heavy and honest, on the 18th world, a human opened the door, she continued. "And they didn't ask who I was. They only asked what I needed." She paused, looking at the gathered faces of the council. "My mother is alive because of them," she said, "and now, millions more alive because humanity taught the galaxy how to care again." The hall was still. No one moved, no one spoke. Even the cold-hearted Torkin ministers lowered their eyes. Admiral Hayes stepped beside Lyra, her voice calm and strong. "Compassion is not a weapon," she said. "It's a bridge." She looked around the chamber, meeting every gaze with quiet fire. "You call it interference? We call it being alive," she said. "We don't measure worth by species or strength. We measure it by who reaches out their hand first." For a moment, the council's grand lights dimmed, as if the stars themselves were listening. The Falari priest rose from his seat, placing a hand over his heart. "Humanity," he said softly, "you have given us back our souls." Across the hall, others stood one by one, soldiers, scientists, ambassadors, until the entire chamber rose in silent respect. It was not applause this time, but something deeper, something sacred. The kind of silence that meant truth had finally been heard. Outside, 1,000 news drones captured the moment, broadcasting it across every system. On distant worlds, people watched and wept. They saw the little girl who had once been refused by all now standing before the council as a symbol of hope. They saw humans, the species once feared for their wars, now healing wounds no one else dared to touch. And across the stars, the message spread like light through darkness. Kindness is the gift of humanity. After the meeting, Lyra stood on the balcony of the council building, looking at the twin suns rising. Daniel and Mara's faces appeared on her communicator, smiling proudly from Earth. "You did it, Lyra," Mara said softly. "You showed them who we really are." Lyra smiled, tears shining in her eyes. "No, we did it," she said. "You opened the first door," behind her. Admiral Hayes placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Remember," she said, "every act of mercy creates another, and somewhere, on the forgotten edges of the galaxy, doors continued to open. Ships of aid flew where once there had been silence. The phrase, 'Be the 18th door,' became a pledge, a promise shared across species. The galaxy, once divided by fear and pride, was slowly learning what humanity had known all along. That strength is not in the hand that strikes, but in the one that reaches to lift another. As the suns rose higher, their light touched Lyra's pendant. Making it glow softly, she looked up, whispering the words that had started it all. When everyone turned away, humanity answered the call, and for the first time in the long, cold history of the stars, kindness had become a power greater than any empire, because this was the gift of humanity, a gift no war could destroy, no council could silence, and no heart could ever forget.